We just got a bunch of brand new information from the Lucasfilm Studio Showcase panel on Friday. I have no idea how soon this will be coming out, but I do plan on covering everything we learned from Star Wars Celebration this weekend, both with individual videos and an overall summary of everything later next week. Arguably the biggest thing we got from this Lucasfilm panel was the first official trailer for the Ahsoka series, coming August later this year. For the sake of the video, I'm just going to go through the trailer, break down each scene, give my thoughts on a lot of it, and then go over any information we got from the panel itself regarding the upcoming series. We start off in some sort of ancient, historical-looking location that honestly reminded me a lot of Immemorial City from the Willow series, just with the rundown feel of it, but there is still that history there. There are engravings on the pillars, but none of it looks like it's anything decipherable. We get a voiceover during this from Ahsoka, talking about how she senses something coming, and it really does feel like this will kick off the final stage of the Mandoverse, and take it into a whole new level. We've had Din and Boba Fett with their smaller scale stories, but this is going to be told on a much broader, intergalactic scale. Ahsoka shows off her little lightsaber trick, spinning them to make a hole in the ground, which is a nice callback to before. And then we get a red Lucasfilm logo, which isn't that important, but I think it really demonstrates how dark this series will get at times. We then get our first look at Natasha Lee Bordizzo as Sabine Wren in live action, and honestly, I think she looks amazing. For all of these characters, I think that it'll take me some time to just get used to them looking and sounding a little bit different than what I'm used to, but I'm so glad that we're getting more stories with these characters that are basically responsible for me loving Star Wars as much as I do. This is the series that took me from a fairly average fan to a diehard one, so I'm looking very much forward to seeing that story continue out with all of these characters in the Ahsoka series. In this shot, Sabine has her helmet off and sitting in front of her, and her hair is much longer than when we see her last in the Rebels epilogue, so either this is closer to the liberation of Lothal and Thrawn and Ezra's disappearance, or it's much later than the epilogue. I definitely think it's the former, because it looks like Sabine is kneeling in a Lothal homestead, probably Ezra's. We know she spent the rest of the Galactic Civil War on Lothal, preparing to defend it if the Empire ever came back, so this is more than likely set during that time. We get to see a precious Lothcat in live action, and in the background it may be Ezra's lightsaber. It's hard to tell, but there's a metallic object in the shape of a lightsaber resting on a pack in the same table. It doesn't exactly look like Ezra's, but it is a possibility. We then see Sabine resting outside of the Lothal Tower, seen many times throughout the series, and that may be the interior we saw previously. Like I said, I know it'll take me some time to get used to her in live action, but I think Bordizzo does really look great as Sabine. We jump back to Ahsoka in the ruined city, as she takes on what looks to be the same design of droids from Season 2 on Corvus. They're missing the same 7th Fleet symbol on the side of their heads, but the HK-87 droids have a similar appearance and color to them, other than the more advanced weaponry to deal with Ahsoka's lightsabers. We then get our first look at Hera Syndulla in live action, played by none other than Mary Elizabeth Winstead herself, highlighting the Phantom in pursuit of some unknown vessel. Same thing with her, she looks amazing as Hera Syndulla. I think there's actually some resemblance there. The prosthetic will be an important factor in how good she looks and moves in live action, but at least from what we see here, that, the costume, and the makeup is all done very well. We also get to see Chopper once again, and I'm sure if Hera continues to appear in the series, so will he. During this time, we get a voiceover from a character named Balin, who looks to be the character played by Ray Stevenson. He was rumored to have been cast in the series, and this trailer confirms it, as well as gives us a little more about who he might be playing. We get our first look at the character, with what looks to be a ship in the background in a darker environment. It's got some red leaves in the background, but I don't think it's anywhere that we've been before in this era. We also see Ivana Sakno's character, named Shin Hati, as she emerges from an elevator onto what I assume is a New Republic command deck. The character wields a red lightsaber, so she'll be a dark side user in some form or fashion, but I think it'll be interesting to see how she plays into the story, since we're only 5 years or so after the fall of the Empire and the deaths of Vader and Palpatine. The next few clips are a recreation and extension of the Rebels epilogue, where Ahsoka meets Sabine back on Lothal. Sabine's outfit is a little different in the scene, with her not sporting the same Mandalorian armor anymore, and her hair's grown out, but it wouldn't make sense if a few details were switched to better integrate it into the series. Or maybe it's set at a different time. We see 5 holograms in the next scene, and we actually have the names of these characters. From left to right, Senator Mawood, Senator Rodrigo, Senator Mon Mothma of course, Senator Xiono, and then Grand Senator. Most are familiar with Mon Mothma, who played a leading role in the Andor series, and returns here as a prominent figure in the New Republic. I don't know how large of a role she'll have, but I know she was reported to appear in the series, and it will be nice to see her a few times, maybe giving us even more details and perspective on the New Republic right now. It would make sense for her to be a contact with Ahsoka, Sabine, and Hera, since they all served in the rebellion together, and she's aware of who Thrawn is and the threat he poses. Some of you may also recognize the name Xiono, as in Kazuda Xiono, the main character of the Star Wars Resistance series, which has largely been ignored by other stories, despite taking place at the same time as the sequels. It wasn't a very popular series, and it was aimed at a much younger audience, but it was a fun watch for me, and it's nice to see at least some connective tissue between stories. The senator here is Kaz's father, so it is possible we see a few other familiar faces as well in the series. Ahsoka mentions whispers of Thrawn's return, and even though we don't get to see who's playing him, we do get to see the backside of his shoulders and head in the iconic white uniform. It does confuse me a bit how Thrawn may have returned to the known galaxy, but Ezra hasn't. Of course, it's way too early to make any judgments or assumptions, but I think most of us were expecting part of the series to be about them going off to find Thrawn and Ezra together. So if Thrawn is already back, that will change how we come into the story. She calls Thrawn heir to the Empire here, and even though it just means in the story that he's the new big bad, having her say those direct words, referring to the Legends novel, sent chills down my back. We then get Morgan Elsbeth standing in the same room that we see Thrawn in, and I'm sure she'll be a major player in the series. We see Ahsoka duel with Baylan in some sort of force field, on a planet that may be the same one from the beginning, or could potentially be Ossus, and we learn that this character is also a dark side warrior, and he's got some armor to protect himself too. My guess is he'll turn out to be the antagonist for the series, while Thrawn is just the looming threat, and will probably play into the overall story more than just this one season of television. We get a few action clips with both Shin and Baylan, and then we get our first look at Ezra Bridger in live action. Sort of. A hologram of him is shown as Sabine sits in what I assume to be another location on Lothal, related to Ezra. We get a little more of Ahsoka, including her dueling someone with a double-bladed lightsaber. It could be Shin from before, but I think it's also possible that there's a third one out there, or maybe it's someone we already know. Fans have speculated over the potential return of Barriss Offee in the series, since we don't know what happened to her after Order 66, and it would make sense for them to cover her face in the footage shown before the episode. It's been teased for so long by Filoni, with him never giving us a straight-up answer, so I think we will likely see her at some point in the series. Another nice inclusion in the trailer is Huang, who is briefly seen in the Clone Wars series working with Jedi younglings. I'm sure he's got plenty of information on the old Jedi Order, so he could turn out to be a valuable resource for Ahsoka. That concludes the trailer, and I am of course very excited for the show. It's been my most anticipated ever since it was announced, and seeing everything they're including in it just makes me even more excited to see everything when it comes out. The series will premiere later this year in August, and I'll be covering anything we learn about the series until then, and reviewing episodes every Wednesday when they release. There's an Ahsoka panel Saturday morning, so by the time this comes out, we may or may not have already learned more about the series, and you can be sure that I'll be covering all of that too. Let me know how excited you are for this series in the comments below, and what your favorite moment from the trailer was. Remember to like the video, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and check out all of my other coverage of Star Wars Celebration this weekend. Thank you all for watching, and remember, the Force will be with you, always.